do remember we were running still, had the whole world at our feet, watching seasons change. Our roads were lined with adventure, mountains in the way couldn't keep us from the sea. Here we stand open arms, this is home where we are, ever strong in the world that we made. I still hear you in the breeze, see your shadow
Okay, so perfect. Now you should be able to hear me. And if you can, then we can get going. And yes, perfect. Okay, I do hear myself. So, but I cannot see us too much. So I'm going to move it here so I can see you. So yeah, perfect. So welcome to this evening's live stream, and my guest is Ange.
Hello.
And we will be talking about binary stuff, which will be pretty random, but you know, is like I always do on the last stream of the year. Basically like a super relaxed stream, which is not super technical, though this one will be technical. Yeah. Okay, I guess let's move a little bit here so you're more on the center of the screen as well. Okay, perfect. Cool. First of all, Ange has a cool t-shirt. You should actually see it. Yeah, it's like his t-shirt got exploited and it has already a calculator running. I guess like that's why the t-shirt might be a joke now. In a couple of years with all the smartware which is coming onto the market, that might not be a joke anymore. Sweet. So, first question to the chat. Can you folks actually hear us? Like, correctly, is the sound okay? I don't see anyone saying otherwise, so I'm pretty sure that everything is fine. The standard stuff. Today's moderator is KrzaQ. His name is somewhere here. Yeah. So if you have any questions to us at any time, especially if you have any questions to Ange, then just ping KrzaQ on either IRC or the YouTube chat, and he will let us know that there is a question. We actually do have, yeah, we have questions here, but it's still. I am going to look a little on the chat, but yeah, please ping KrzaQ. The second thing, the donations today are going to a random charity of Ange's choice. So yeah, thank you for donating if there will be any donations. One remark here is that PayPal donations are still not hooked up to the animation displaying script yet. Sorry about that. So yeah, but they will be at some point. Cool. So yeah, let's get going then. First question. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I guess this is the most default question ever.
Okay.
Why do you think I invited you to this live stream?
As a sacrifice for Christmas. No, just kidding. I'm always interested in reverse engineering for many years. From games to malware to security. And I don't know, just spend a nice moment, I guess.
Cool. So I actually know that you are into low-level binary stuff way longer than I am. Oh, thank you for the donation. Yeah, this is what shows up when my fancy Syndicate Wars animation script. Thank you, Sebastian. It will go to a random charity. So I know for a fact that you started binary stuff way earlier than I did.
Really?
Basically, I think I started programming when you started this, or even you started earlier. So that's well, some time ago. What got you into binary stuff? I mean, wasn't web more interesting, like HTML and stuff?
No, I started binary stuff before I had access to the internet. So
Thanks,
first, it's a problem the other way around. No, it's just I guess cheating at games.
Cheating at games.
Sounds like that's why I started using hex editors and eventually disassemblers. But I think that was the first reason. Before I had internet a bit late. I'm not that young, and no CTF and no web stuff. So and even nothing about exploitation, but definitely cheating at game, and that's about it. And
so do you mean like multiplayer games, like map hacks and wall hacks?
Oh no. My first LAN was also quite late. You know, when you had to carry the CRT and visit your friends with the car. So you basically you need to have a permit, a driving permit, so that delayed everything. So no, it was more like you had you had a floppy with a disassembler and printed documentation explaining how to trigger soft ice or this kind of thing. That yeah, I had soft ice and other disassemblers before I had the internet, I think. So that's how I started. Yes, and actually I've seen some people crack Lucasfilm games with debug from DOS.
Like the debug.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's pretty awesome because it's a VM in the end. It's the whole game is running on a custom VM. So yeah, before modern tools, when IDA was out, I didn't understand the point of that, and I don't know to put. And I hated actually the non-text version before. So even before there was a graph view, I hated that. I mean, I didn't see the point. Yeah, a bit old school, just a bit.
So, actually, the first book about assembly, which I bought, was about how to create assembly programs compiled with debug.com. So there was a book specifically like, don't use like any turbo assembler or anything, just use debug.com, which is also. I still consider it pretty weird choice, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if I remember, either DOS 1 had the debug and the ability to assemble some stuff. I might be wrong, but they really give you a lot of tools. And yes, I've seen a lot of stuff with debug.com, and yes, I'm really not surprised.
Okay.
I mean, okay, sorry, just a bit old.
So, what was the first game you practiced like cheating? And I guess that was save game editing, right? That was what we did in the old school.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, the game you had to boot and you had to reboot the computer once the game was started. So it was a bit painful for every time of the save game. Another thing I remember is that I remember taking my notes on about the offset and the values of the game with a typewriter.
Like a
mechanical
typewriter.
Typewriter, my mom's typewriter. I remember taking the notes. I should have found this, and really not an electronic or really the mechanical typewriter. And when you have a typo, then you can only strike through. And yeah, I remember taking my first assembly notes with the typewriter.
That's pretty amazing. Cool. So you did mention that one of the first save game edits, cheats in the game you did was by accident. How did that happen? What happened?
Yeah, by accident you mean save games definitely were not an accident. I mean, they were definitely on purpose. So yes, I at the time in magazines they would give you sequences of hex to search and replace. And you would just try that blindly and hope that suddenly the games give you infinite lives and everything. So I just tried the same myself, and I noticed that the patterns being replaced were always like something like 74 and 75 replaced to 90 and hebi. So of course conditional jumps and nopping. So I just took the binary, I think it was in 1991. I took the binary of that game. Luckily it was not packed, but I didn't know that at the time. And I just searched for the first 775 in the hex and replace it. And then I try the game, and then I see if the game is working and if it's doing something positive. And it didn't, but I take the original executable and I tried again, and eventually I got infinite lives. So that was the luck of the total clueless beginner, I guess. But yeah, that's what being young is for, right?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, just noticing the pattern here and not understanding what's going on, and still succeeding. That's amazing. I love the story.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I should be ashamed or anything, but definitely I was very happy. Saying I found I got infinite lives myself, and proving it, even in not understanding how it happened. I mean, that was no disassembler or anything, right? The disassembler already existed, but yeah, just blind in hex. So at least my love for hexadecimal started some time ago.
Sweet. So one story you told me when we were actually working here was about how did the antivirus industry handle viruses in the past with find this, replace with this. Can you share that story? And especially the one with the drive, like noticing that the virus.
I also so basically I was exchanging games with my friends at school, and it was one of the first virus, I think, ping pong, and a French magazine was actually giving was explaining how to remove it manually. So by giving taking a full drive editor like PC Tools at the time, and doing a search and replacing with something. And this is how we removed the first virus infection that we had, and it works. So again, at least we did that with, I think, with with the control of my dad, but I'm not sure he was more used to PC Tools than I think I was more used to him than to PC Tools than him. And then, well, I got a couple of other viruses, but most notably we got infected with Tequila, which was in fact storing its payload in the last sector of the drive. And for you who are used to floppy drives or old hard drive, they were definitely noisy. And because the head had to move to the last sector, it was making a significant noise, especially it was not in a normal operation. So eventually I got used to that sound, because initially I didn't know what happened, and then there were problems. And so at some point I thought I had cleaned all my floppies of the virus. And once later I run a game, and the game starts, and I hear that sound, the sound of, I mean, it was a floppy game, and suddenly you hear the sound of the hard disk head doing this weird, unusual noise. And then I knew by sound that Tequila was back, and indeed it was, and I had to clean my hard disk with VirusScan, I think the ancestor of McAfee.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool story. Like, how do you find a virus? Oh, you listen how the head moves of your hard drive. Okay, well, that's the first.
Well, when you hear it, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, it's probably like if the head went to the end of this, just like clicked when it found the edge. But yeah, sweet. So there are already a couple of questions. First one is to Santa. I guess that's you. How much time to spend in reading file format specifications? And thank you for the posters.
File format specifications is like a romance. It's never ending. You spend your evenings with them, and it's like it's not about reading them. It's really like you keep. I would be surprised if I don't have a tab open on any specification at a given point, because you just for refreshing or whatever. So how much time I'm always thinking that as soon as you're afraid to even estimate the time you spend on something, probably you did well. So I clearly don't have an answer, but yes, I spent a lot of time. I read definitely more file format specs than educational books for my kids.
So
and thanks, welcome for the posters. I made them for everyone.
So we'll get attached on the posters in a second. One question here is, or a follow-up question. So it's not enough to read the specification once. I guess you keep rereading it. Do you find yourself sometimes reading the specification for like the 5th time and still spotting something which is interesting?
Oh yes, I'm very rarely, I'm very bad with words. I need practical experience. So I start to read the specs, and immediately I confirm by looking at simple files. And if possible, I also check open source parsers. So it's really, I'm totally unable to read the specs thoroughly. And I definitely want to have some hands-on practical experience. So as soon as I have an idea of how a basic file would work, probably I would even try to generate my own from the very beginning, even if I only understand an extremely small percentage of the specs. So it's more the other way around. I keep reading new part of the spec that I haven't explored, but it's on the other hand, I already have an idea, even after creating my first file, how a basic file should work and how a standard parser would handle that file.
Okay.
So always the kind of, it's not definitely not the specs, because specs are sometimes an illusion or a lie, but it's more like the specs for the gentle introduction or sometimes the confusing lie, and then immediately look at reality. Files a simple file of that format and a parser if there is such a one, or even a parser with the disassembly, because it's not that bad to read disassembly. I mean, I'm used to, you know, you have a tool, there's no documentation, or there's no source. A disassembler also does the trick, especially for parsers, because usually parsers are not that complex in structure. People don't mess with that. They usually, when it's not their format, of course.
Okay, so you mentioned already that the file format specification, right, which is useful for you. You mentioned that you are looking a lot of the parsers. Are you using any other resources? So usually one resource is I point people at your posters.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about posters in a second. Do you use any other resources apart from the official specification and the parser, source, or disassembly?
Of course, if there is any other unofficial specification, I will definitely try to look at that and even ask people in case, especially obviously experts on the topic. Sometimes something I do like to is also not look at definitely at the most common parser, because they can be pretty obscure with a lot of, when they have to compile on every platform on Earth, the source can be pretty unreadable. So, but on the other hand, if you take, for example, a Python only parser that is very simple in its code style, and then maybe even I would add a lot of print output to have more information, it can also be very useful.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's move to the posters. So the posters you're making are the...
Yes.
Yeah, I guess we have some printed out, so I guess let's show some posters. This is one of the things Ange is, I guess, well known for.
I'm not sure which one to start with.
Okay, so which one is your favorite?
Which one is my favorite? That's a good question.
We have quite a lot of posters.
We can start with the first one. It should be around here.
The first one you ever made?
Yes. Don't take showers, because one day I was like in a shower and I thought, oh, I'll make a poster about pee. Actually, I can do the other way around. I can show the poster that started it all from Eero Carrera. And because that was my inspiration, I was like, hey, let's try to make a poster. And I had no idea how to make a poster. I downloaded Inkscape, file new. And this is the P format layout from Eero Carrera. And then I knew and I liked this poster, and I just thought, hey, let's do the same because of that stupid shower. So don't take showers. That's the advice of a French person. And then I just thought, let's try, and then file new, and then eventually I did this thing, which actually Ginfail helped translating to Polish. After a few months, that's P101, so it's a bit bigger.
I can grab it.
Okay, so here there are printing bugs because of PDF compatibility with the printers, but...
You broke the printer, admittedly.
Yeah, I broke the printer again. And that was my first one, and it was really I just said, okay, let's try to do something, and it evolved a lot, and but after a month it was like this, and that's the very first. And yeah, it was actually not that hard, but again I really spent a lot of time on it, making out all the little details or something.
So just a quick correction, I actually just did some typo fixing. Adam translated, I believe.
Yeah.
The credits
and you
right.
corrected, you worked with him for the second version. Yeah, sorry for that. Yes, exactly. But yeah, that's true. Thanks, Adam, too. Even, I don't know if you're here. So yeah, that was it sounded stupid, you know, make a poster. I had no experience in that, even if my wife and my surroundings and my colleagues were like, nobody's interested in posters anyway, and I just kept going on, and the number of downloads and the feedback I had for that proved them wrong, and it didn't really stop, even though maybe now I would spend much less time to make them.
So what did you make them in? What was the application of your choice? Are you making them in Photoshop?
No. I'm not sure how it started. I think by then, yes, I had already worked on the PDF file format professionally in the antivirus industry, and I already knew the benefit of vector formats. So definitely, I wanted them to be vector and portable and usable like everywhere, which was the still existing advantage of PDF, which is still the advantage of PDF. So definitely I wanted something vector and reusable. And actually this one, I really went the extra mile. Just I mean, I didn't know if I would do more posters by then, but this one has been translated to Polish, Russian, French, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, and there were Unicode problems. And I really tried, and of course in Arabic you have to reverse the layout in some way. And I really, because I like polyglot stuff, I really try also to make that extra effort, but I never repeated that. But definitely that was also an interesting thing. Once you do it in vector, you can easily re-edit it. That's a good thing, even if you have no experience and you do with vector, you know, everything you draw is an object and you can still modify it. So basically it's the perfect way to be wrong and correct it eventually. Even you do it totally wrong and then you zoom and then you can place things exactly at the same place, or you can even change the text to another language. So that's really why I chose vector, because yeah, basically you don't see all the mistakes on the way, especially when I was really a total beginner in drawing at the time. That was a bit more than 5 years ago.
So the application Inkscape.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
This is also what I would prefer to use, in all honesty, and what I'm also using, like parts of the layout, which you see, for example, the donation bar, which appears, also was designed in Inkscape.
And Inkscape is free, instant download and install, and I use it on 3 platforms. So no excuse that it's hard to install, or it has bugs, of course, but not so many of them. It's actually, I still use it after 5 years. I hope Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator is much better because it's expensive, but at least I know that Inkscape works reliably on all platforms and I've been using it ever since. So no excuse for not doing drawings in Inkscape.
But that's also made in Inkscape.
Yeah. I redrew calc in Inkscape.
Really?
Yeah, because it's redrawn, because otherwise it would be too pixelated.
Sweet. Cool. So let's see. There are some questions. What kind of tools you use in binary format research?
So what kind of tools? So first, for the discovery part, I use open parsers and pure Python or something, or such parsers. I also, if there is a given hex editor that has already a template like 010 or Kaitai, then I would, it can also very help you a lot, give you a big shortcut into helping you understanding the structure. And then usually I end up anyway rewriting the structure with a Python script. And when it's an executable and it needs some things like padding or offsets, then I would just rewrite the structure in an ASM, in assembly, even though I don't actually use any opcodes. So, and then I use that to be a script to generate the whole structure myself. And I guess that's about it. There is no secret language that covers all the formats or such a thing. And sometimes, although of course low-level operators, like for Poker GTFO, we use some specific PDF tech or commands, and then of course handmade scripts to pre-process or post-process files. The thing is, we very rarely use existing libraries for these operations, because what existing libraries actually take the data of the file and restructure in their own way, and they rewrite the file. Even if you just ask to change 1 byte, the resulting file will be very different. And so, while in our case, we would probably want to maintain the exact structure file and just change 1 byte somewhere. So very often it's, 99% of the time it's a custom script, and it's not that expensive to write.
Cool. So I guess we're going to touch on the tools later, especially Kaitai, which I didn't know before actually Ange mentioned it when we chatted about what should we show on the live stream. So yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. That being said, okay, so let's remove this and let's get back to, I'll answer, or we'll answer the questions in a second, to the posters. So you did the portable executable format poster, right? And your posters are, by the way, available for free and as open source, right, on GitHub?
Yes.
I guess this is the moment, like my cue to actually show some web pages for you or about you. This one is the most important one. This is on GitHub if you look up Korkami, which I guess most of my viewers know by this moment since I do sometimes advertise this website. You can find your posters and pics,
yeah,
I guess, and here.
then the binary posters.
Binary posters, if you could.
And then, yeah, I just use that for, so by basics of computing, we'll talk about that later, I guess. Then file formats ones, simple one, I mean, well, it depends what you call simple. At least these files here are quite simple, and then these ones down here are a bit more detailed. Then these old, my god, they are so flashy. I've got tables. Yeah, that's about it for the file format so far, but I'm working on much more.
Okay, I'm going to give you the links on the chat so you can follow up on it. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, the second page I wanted to show is like follow Ange on Twitter. It's Ange Albertini. And wow, these are actually Polish letters.
Yeah.
I guess this is Japanese, Chinese.
Yeah. So this is Japanese, so it's in Japanese you would read as something close to Ange.
Okay.
And so the emoji of an angel is actually funny because it's very different from one font to the other. So sometimes you just have the head and aureole, and sometimes you have the complete body in black and white, depending on the font. So this emoji is very schizophrenic, and then yeah, Polish version of Ange, and then Japanese version of Ange.
Okay. It's like
Polyglot and schizophrenic. I like
yeah,
it.
I really like following Ange's stuff since you look at like just his name on Twitter and there's already a story behind it. So yeah, follow him on Twitter. I'm going to give you the links as well. And one last thing I wanted to show you is basically on Patreon. If you, well, I guess everyone already heard by this time about the controversy, but controversy is like Patreon stuff. But if you'd like to support the creator, Ange also has a page on Patreon, so check it out. And going back to, okay, so these are where your posters are.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the posters, what was the second poster you did?
That's a good question. Oh,
Or maybe you want to, like,
yeah.
It doesn't have to be the second.
Yeah, but because definitely, I didn't know if I would make a second one. So definitely going through all the translations was already very interesting, especially learning to speak with someone who doesn't necessarily speak your language and everything. So it was an extra effort. Now, what was
so
the
wait,
second
you
one?
did all the translations before you did the second poster?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, no,
okay.
not all of them because
Most of
I
them.
couldn't find, for some reason, one person started the Chinese translation, then gave up, then I have to find someone else. So it really depends on the availability. So thanks again for all my translators. But what would be the next poster? I'm not sure now. That's a good question, actually. I don't know. I don't know. What's chronologically? It's some time ago. Just try. What do I have in stock? At least I can show. I'm not sure it's the second one, but it makes sense because I wanted another poster that explains. On the other hand, so that's the first one we show is P101. So the first lesson on the portable executable, and this one is P102, which is actually very different, not showing an actual file, but all the structures in details. And also always trying to show the relation or the structure like import table, export table, and with the offsets. So a good one-page reminder of the whole structures and also trying to add as many information as I could and fit in this size of document.
Wow, that's actually quite a lot of information here.
Yeah, a bit too small. I mean, it should be printed bigger. Definitely. Actually, when you print them, I use these A3 folders, and when you print them on double, then you can easily get A2 with two of them. So does that work? Yes, that works. So then you can already, with something you can roll in your bag, you can already get A2 size by printing two A3 in landscape and then handling that. And because it's, you can also change them. So if I rotate, then I have, is it the right? Yeah, P101. Always with the printer arrow in the corner, because printer hates me, so I hate them as well. It's fine.
Cool. So yeah, I actually know. I don't know. Can you still order your posters in like printed format somewhere? Because we actually have some in the office, quite a lot of them. So can you still order them?
Oh yes, yes. I have a Redbubble account.
Okay, can you actually show it maybe? Because I'm quite curious. Now let me find. Yeah, here we go. Maybe good to look for it. We can get the keyboard closer if you like.
Oh, oops. It should do it. Yes. And yeah, so you can see. I don't put all my drawings on Redbubble, but at least definitely you can order them. And some people order them on pillows or on a tote bag or t-shirt. Alex, I know you ordered, you presented with a t-shirt of the PDF file format. Sometimes it's good because you say, I draw stuff. And people are, yeah, okay. It doesn't impress people anyway, especially when you're a reverser and it's like, huh, really? It's like, the other day, a woman ordered a pillow of my, you cannot buy that, you know? Actually, when I started at Google, I was introduced like, oh, this is the guy who makes the poster that you see around. So it's not the worst way to be introduced. And yeah, when you know that some people order it on pillows or whatever. So here we have all the languages. So you can take the Arabic one.
And this one?
Yep, the R, yeah.
Do you prefer?
Yeah, it should be. It will show it the nice backward. If you don't know, you click the alone. Yeah. Now you have Arabic in all its splendor. So some stuff is reverse and some stuff is not. And actually, if you can you zoom around here on the Windows NT?
Yeah,
oops, what happened?
But, yeah.
You see that some Arabic. There is some Arabic, then some. So NT4 is written the non-Arabic way, and basically Inkscape doesn't support that at all. It actually makes Inkscape crash a couple of times, so it's actually two texts on top of each other. So I learned dealing with Unicode and funny fonts that I cannot even read.
Okay, fuzzing the Inkscape when making a poster, perfect.
Yes, and then I discovered, I was told that the way that letters merged in Arabic is wrong with that font, and it's like, I would say it's Chinese to me, but no, there is also a Chinese. There is also a Chinese. And by the way, I think the Polish one is the one where the text becomes the longer. So that was the other problem. If you do Chinese, the words will get very dense, and if you do Polish, suddenly so I don't know.
So the spacing and layout is everything differs. So okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't do it. I prefer just to stay with the English one, but definitely it was an interesting experience.
So what I wanted to show here is there was a question on chat whether there are PDF files for printing, and yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Just go into one of the directories, for example, this one, and you have like SVGs and PDFs and PNGs.
Maybe not all the time SVGs, because for SVG you need to actually get the right font, right. And then you need to get Inkscape because the browser will not render correctly. But of course they are with PNG so that you can view them directly, because not everyone wants to open my PDFs, right? But on top of that, when you have the PDF, you have the right font at the right space, at the right place. So it's one file and you get the whole thing in vector. So definitely all my files are at least in PDF and sometimes the SVG, but again, I know that people will open the SVG and the font that they don't have in the system, or maybe they have to buy, because I buy font too. Then they will not have it and they will say, why is this not working? And actually I've seen a few screenshots of my posters and the people didn't have the font and it looks screwed, but people maybe didn't realize, or maybe they thought it was a part of the file. So yes, that's why always at least as PDF and as PNG for the preview.
Okay, makes sense. So perfect. So SVGs have no way of actually embedding a font, right? Or
no,
they just not use it?
I don't think they even have.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I will. Cool. So okay, so you made the awesome PE 102 poster. Are there any other fun posters you made or which you are like super proud of?
Super proud of. That's a good question. That one is pretty interesting, and because it's bzip2, and bzip2 is not byte based. Yeah, it's a bit-based nightmare. So it's only after, so to understand the bzip2 file format correctly, so I had to really come with a different layout, because again, you will not, so you have the bytes, and then you have the bits values, and then you have, you can see the alignments, the values of each bits, what they mean with different colors. And basically to even be able to understand that, I took a pure Python decompressor and I really made it output individually all the information. And it's only recently that I learned that Octeta on Linux has actually a bit view.
Oh really?
But it doesn't have any template, but at least bzip2 at byte level doesn't make any sense, I mean, beyond the signature.
Yeah, Octeta is a hex editor for Linux. It's pretty good actually. I really like it.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes it's really worth opening the right tool if it has a special view or a special dissection, so Kaitai or Ashwar or Octeta. So I have my favorite hex editor, but really I don't know, maybe I rely on the 10 different tools depending on the mood.
Yeah, use the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. So, okay, so Kaitai, we mentioned the name for the third time, I think, including me mentioning it. So, could you show us Kaitai? What is it? Well, because it's actually awesome.
Yeah, Kaitai, I think the best way is, the best part is really that it's even available online and you can directly use it. Kaitai Web IDE, and you already have that. And you could drop your file and you choose one of the template, and then you already have the dissection. So here it's already with the zip, and you can already see all the values. You can create your own grammar. It has an online compiler, so you don't even need to use a single tool. Now it's in the recent, since last week or so, it has a console dumper, which if you don't want the GUI, then you can use that. So basically you just have a grammar that is YAML, and then you drop a file, you select the grammar, or you put your own grammar, and then you'll have the dissection, and you can jump through the items, and you have all the values and everything. Another nice, so for the last issue of Poker GTA4, we actually embedded Kaitai, so it's Evan's work. So Kaitai is embedded in the file, and so with a custom grammar, so that the file can load Kaitai itself. I mean, the file itself contains Kaitai, and with the grammar that is embedded, then Kaitai, the file helps you to dissect itself, to explain itself. So it's a file that helps you to reverse itself by embedding the whole Kaitai. So very nice project, already many grammars, and online compiler, online web IDE, really a very nice project. And sometimes unknown file format, find first if it's in Kaitai. So there are a lot of them. And I don't know if you want to drop your latest 0 day, so that you
my latest 0 day for Kaitai.
Just drop. I mean, I don't know what.
Maybe not my. Yeah, the first file I had selected is actually my private key for some API. Let's not use that one. Here, mission. Okay, this one. I'm going to go. No, not with that one though. With this one.
Well, they won't see the content, right? Yep. And now images probably.
Yeah, but this is a PNG actually. So can I actually zoom this a little? Yes, I can. Let's do this way. Image.
Yeah, double click and then PNG. Yes.
Okay.
And now.
And this is so. I actually also written a tool which is called Deep File Inspector, which does something similar. We used it on CTFs, and it's actually not public. And I'm wondering if it could be replaced with this awesome tool.
So that's the grammar here that you scroll in. We see.
Does it already, are these the values? Yeah, these are the values from the file, right?
Yeah, so here you have the hex, you can load it, and here you have the object, the tree of the...
So this is the grammar, I could modify it on the fly?
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty awesome. So let's see the chunks.
And if you click, it will jump in the hex view.
Oh, that's true. Oh, it's like similar to Wireshark, right? And like clicking on the header and immediately following it. You actually, with the camera, we are, well, hiding the values, but everything else is visible. What's this info panel? Disable label parsing.
Oh, I don't know.
Export to JSON. Cool.
And yeah, you can edit the grammar on the fly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
So
especially we install nothing, and yeah, sometimes it's.
Can you also script it, or is it because like YAML isn't really Turing complete, and some parsing requires like some more advanced stuff, right?
I don't think there is this possibility. So it's at least it's an obvious limitation.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, but it's still great to actually start on that.
I might be wrong though. I'm using Kaitai just like this, which is already awesome, and I'm not a Kaitai expert in myself.
It's pretty awesome. Cool. Okay, so that's Kaitai. I think you mentioned also some other tools.
There was Ashwar is a dissector. Ashwar is a dissector.
Okay, that's the way.
No, yeah, but of course it's also the name. Yeah, it's a French word.
I think I actually have it installed.
Yeah, it's in Python. So maybe if we say Ashwar Python will have a snake that is. Yeah, that's probably more like it. But will maybe not have a picture of it.
I'm pretty sure I have it installed. So
okay.
Let me do a quick check.
Yeah, I read it the French way. It's.
Is it the correct? No, I don't have it installed. That's no.
Hashcard.
Some time ago actually reinstalled my VM. So let's see. No, I don't have it.
Okay.
So yeah, another time. Maybe
you've seen it in my presentations. It's also it has a Kaitai-like view. No.
This is part of the window.
Yeah. There is also you. Yeah, here I was. Yeah, that's definitely Ashwar.
Yeah. That looks. Here we go.
Yeah, okay. That's definitely Ashwar. So
I cannot zoom it very well. I can zoom it like this.
But yeah, same idea. Hex and structure as a tree underneath. So, and then also 010 editor, which is a commercial.
How do you take it?
So 010 editor.
Oh, it's the hex editor, right?
Yeah, hex editor, which has some grammar, which are Turing complete, I think. And it has a lot of grammar. And now someone, Doc Savage, I think, editor grammar, did a plugin for Vim. Nope. What's this? Yeah, Doc Savage. So that you can reuse not only you can reparse the grammars, but on top of that you can even reedit them, reuse them in a Vim plugin. But again, I try not to use 010 editor because the format is C-like, but will be limiting yourself to. I mean, you cannot with the rest. If you do a Kaitai grammar, everyone can reuse it. And so on. You know, with. So I want to share the content of my work. There are also other tools like Synalyze, other tools with grammars. But again, as soon as they're commercial. I mean, the language is really custom specific to this software. I have a natural tendency because already I would use them on several platforms. So when you have something like Kaitai, you know you're gonna be able to use it everywhere.
So who made Kaitai, by the way?
I know the Twitter handles. That's about it. The Kaitai team. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I checked the prices, and it seems that 010 editor is like the price is similar to Hex Workshop-ish, in that way that the home usage is actually cheaper than Hex Workshop, and the commercial usage is actually more expensive. So yeah, I'm actually using Hex Workshop, which also has some grammar support, so that's why I'm mentioning it. Cool. Okay, let's do maybe some questions. So there's one question which is, I guess, specifically for me. From Przemysław, how do applications support hotkeys on laptop? Can any Win32 app hook for key press in background? How is this from a security perspective? So it depends, because laptops have usually like some function key, which some magical shortcuts, and it I think depends on the laptop how it's exactly done, but it's more on like somewhere deeper. That being said, if you're thinking about like global hotkeys, the usual ones, then you can register them. There's like there are a couple of ways to do it. You can either register a global hotkey in Windows, or you can register a hook, which basically is called for every key press in the system, and that way do basically, well, hotkeys, right? That being said, the second method is mostly used by keyloggers, obviously, and yeah, from security perspective, is like I think you need an admin or close to that to do at least the second one. For the first one, I think it's actually possible from like medium priority processes, medium integrity level processes for the given Windows session. This is why actually, like, if I would press Alt Control Delete then something or log out, that's actually in a different Windows session, so this will not be affected by any keylogger which is started normally. But yeah, it's I don't remember actually what are the exact permissions needed for that, but they're too low in my opinion. And actually sometimes, like, I run an application and it's for some reason hooks some keys which another application already hooked for hotkeys, and that's annoying. But there are some programs which can show you which applications are listening for which hotkeys and have like hooks installed. Unless you want to add something to it. I know we both worked in the antivirus industry for some time, so I guess this is like also a common question there.
Yeah, nothing to add from more.
Okay, so let's move on. Did you handcraft an executable binary without an assembler? What do you mean without an assembler here? Is it without using any compiler, or do you mean with a hex editor? Did you handcraft a binary with a hex editor?
No, I will start the other way around. What do you mean with executable binary? And I actually knew the story and I reproduced it recently, so definitely the answer is yes, because what's an executable binary? And so before DOS, there was CP/M. CP/M is the ancestor of DOS. It didn't have directories, it had very few abilities. And if you're familiar with already the COM format of DOS, it doesn't have any header. So basically, the content is copied to memory and executed. On CP/M, there was no size check. So first of all, the null file was valid.
So an empty file was valid. It was a valid executable.
Yeah, it's a valid executable. But on top of that, the memory was not freed between execution. So a file was limited to this area of memory, and the memory was not freed between two executions. So basically, by long executing the null file, the empty file, it would just copy the content, which is erase nothing, and the memory was not cleared, and restart execution. So basically it was relaunching the previous command. So under CP/M, the empty file is valid and useful, and it was actually sold, so it's commercially, so it's infinitely profitable. And a few years ago, I actually went through the step to actually reproduce it and make sure it works. Or if you had an abstract CPC, for example, it's possible. I made
I have some in my... I have two actually.
I can show you some slides later, or maybe
yeah, we can, if you have where to find them.
Yeah.
Here you go.
So on my slide deck, we can actually. I wanted to show. I did presentation. I did presentation in front of the digital preservation, so not InfoSec. And does that work? No, it doesn't work. What? Sorry, I'm taking my time.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, yes. Exploiting. So I have some talks about lots of things, and then I have some talks about file format.
Can I actually give? I'm actually going to give people this link.
Yeah.
So here we go, because this is a really important and valuable thing.
So I have a presentation about InfoSec and file formats. I have presentation about video games, and also some for, again, this is for the digital preservation. And I actually redid the steps, and you can redo it yourself. So sorry, I'm gonna for the empty file, because that was the example, right? What is a valid file? And this is not documented, but What is a valid file? So on this computer, I actually can probably zoom on this computer. We launch, so it has Amstrad CPC. You have to run this command to run CPM with this 3-inch floppy, not 3.5, 3-inch floppy. Maybe you have one somewhere.
Yeah, I have one here.
And then with add this, you start editing a file. That's actually my first editor. It's not editor where you could go through the file. You had to specify the line you want to create. Then you immediately end it. So now you have a file that has a size of 0 byte. And is it valid? Yes. Does it do anything? Yes. And if you launch it, it's actually relaunching the previous software. So now you too can create an empty binary. And again, these tools, the add and stats, are the standard tools, because there are very, very few things. So that's editor, the text editor, and that's just the extended directory, the way to have information about a file. And this works, and this file is valid, and it was commercial. So you create an empty, successful commercial program without a hex editor. Well done.
Okay, so I guess that answers the question from Melvin. He also on the chat said that just using a hex editor versus using add. Yeah, you created an executable file which was empty. Okay, I guess also that was not really
what you expected.
Yeah, well, what anyone expected.
Sorry for that. Actually,
it is an amazing story, bro.
There is a good reason I started using assembly to create advanced patch, because in one of the presentation I spoke about preserving old arcade games, and I had this crazy project to take an existing emulator, namely Calus. If you remember, it was a CPS1 emulator, so Final Fight, the original Street Fighter 2. And I started to patch and add, because it was not supported anymore, so I started to really create an advanced patch. And I started adding new games that were dumped to this binary that was not recompiled anymore by anyone. So that was my first use of IDA, so IDA 3.85, before it has a GUI. And my first patch of Calus was done in hex editor, without assembly or any smart patching or modifying. So modifying the P yourself, modifying the entry point. It was working well until one day I had to add 1 byte. And then I decided I need to find something better. So I used the tools by Xelion, which was called Code Snippet Creator, which was enabling you to create space in the PE and automatically inject some code from assembly. So from MASM, if I remember correctly, and then I did the patch of my patch in Calus that was doing a lot of stuff, adding new games, control, supporting new games with as MASM code, patching everything in the binary and injected by Xelion statically. So then the final binary, if you download Calus patch, it's still available on the internet, I think. You should probably see that the entry point is weird and does a lot of patch manually. That was my code 20 years ago. But that was at least a reason why I really wanted to step up from pure hex editor, because that was not a good solution in the long run. And now, I was a bit comfortable with patching stuff with assembly stuff. I have another patching story of that time, which is also very interesting for security purposes. One day I was hanging on the IRC chat of Win32ISM, and someone from the Napster, if you remember the first music downloader tool, came on that chat. Basically, there was a bug that was preventing downloads to finish correctly. So many downloads were stuck at 99%. Mm-hmm. That person had the source. I had the experience and IDA ready. I mean, I had the tools, and so obviously he came in that chat for that. And so basically with that person, we made sure of the minimum patch to fix the bug. Then I also, as requested, I created a minimum patch to actually patch the binary, and that patch was sent silently to every user in the next version, or maybe there was already a system for that, was sent silently to every user to patch the binary transparently.
Okay.
For security reasons, it's interesting, I think. And I was credited in the next version.
So it's like Microsoft patching whatever they patched like a couple of weeks ago using a hex editor is not the first patch like that in history, like a binary patch.
Yeah, because here I even crafted the patcher and I just made sure it was only a couple of 100 bytes or whatever. So
sweet. Okay, cool. So okay, so to get back to Melvin's question about, I'm going to rephrase it a little. Could you create a P file, a P executable file using just the hex editor? Should we switch to this to the desktop?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So I will go. Where is it?
Yeah, I've meant the Microsoft equation binary for MS Word. That's exactly that. Thank you, Melvin.
This is something I did really for real, and this actually defines the structure. You can see on picture. This actually defines the structure of a P. So not only without an assembler, with Duplo blocks. And this is the complete binary, you see. So you can just follow this information, and this gives you a working binary.
Okay.
And actually took my son, so you can see his stuff. My wife, well, anyway, I've dragged it on me. So, yeah. So again, what I mean here is that by crafting custom files, I also want to craft the file as simple as possible. And then crafting, when you have a file that is as simple as possible, it's actually very important when you do your poster. It's not take any binary and make a graphic of it, because otherwise you have something insanely complex with a lot of information that is not necessarily relevant. So rather, first become confident and familiar enough to be able to create a file that is meaningful yet simple to explain. And then it's actually very easy to even retype this file by hand.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like, you could add some bytes, but like some padding, but apart from that, you could basically take this file and put it in a hex editor and it would have an executable file.
If we take this file, if we take this actually P file, I made it so that it's really it made it so that it's actually as simple as possible. It works, and just retyping that in a hex editor will give you a working binary.
Okay, so I guess that should answer that question, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Przemysław said that I've heard that Inkscape works even on Windows 10s. What is Windows 10s?
A special embedded version? I don't know.
No, that's Windows IoT, I think it's called. What's Windows 10s? Let's see. The versions of Windows, okay. It's optimized
for the
for
surface?
security.
That's nice to know.
In all honesty, I didn't know this stuff existed, so thank you, Przemysław, for yet again sharing something which I didn't know.
But at least, yes, I use Windows Inkscape. I used it with lots of OS, including Windows 10, but I didn't know about Windows 10s. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Why do you think there are no antivirus on Linux?
Because why? Because there's no market. There's the first reason why there's antivirus, because there is a market.
That's true. But that's not fully true, right? I mean, there are technically antiviruses for Linux, but for example, when they do, you put them on mail servers, so they scan the incoming emails.
Yes.
That being said, yeah, I guess we could rephrase the question: why there are no viruses on Linux, or is there no malware on Linux?
Yes, I know, for example, that the Avira antivirus was even working on. There was a Solaris version.
A Solaris version, okay.
Yes, and even fairly recently. I mean, not like 20 years ago or something.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, a way to answer the question. I don't know.
Yeah, but like I would add to it that, well, first of all, there is little malware, because when you focus on Linux security and you think about Linux and Unix security, you think about actually skilled hackers breaking into your servers, right? And on Windows, when you think about security, especially as maybe a technical person, but not in the IT security world, then you think about malware. You think about sending an executable file to somebody who will run it then. And it would still work on Linux, though the person had to probably like chmod the file first. But I guess the real answer is here that like nobody uses Linux. I'm sorry, it's not the year of the Linux yet, and this isn't true obviously for the servers. Most servers probably in the world are like on Linux, but it is true for desktop computers, and most users who actually log into banking applications, which is the most interesting part for malware, do use Windows. So that's why the malware people focus on Windows, and this is why the antivirus people focus on Windows as well, because there is malware there.
Yeah.
So it's a long answer, but it boils down to that basically. If like suddenly like all users switch to Linux, there will be malware on Linux really fast. Like I think there was a story on like about Apple that Apple was saying, oh, there is no malware for Apple, and somebody like issued a bounty like, please create a virus for Apple, but then they backed out of it. It was a story from like 10 years ago, but I consider it quite funny. Okay, when did you start with the binary stuff?
So what do you mean by binary stuff? Hex editing. So as I said, cheating with save games at the end of in the early 90s. Then advanced patching at the end of the 90s. So the stuff that I did with the Xelion code snippet creator. One of the binary aspects that we didn't mention yet, and it's related to these posters, that because I worked in the antivirus industry and I was fed up of the specifications being incomplete, that's exactly why I started to experiment and make my own binaries, even with Duplo blocks, just to make to discover tricks and to discover the real extent of the possibilities of the loader before an attacker does that. Actually, I got some message from supposedly virus creator who told me they ran out of ideas because it was my idea, burn a part of the forest before the fire is out of control. And this was really my idea. And another benefit of that is that sometimes people had a sample that they couldn't share, but they could share a specific characteristic of that, then reproduce it in a clean file that is direct to the point, a good atomic test for everyone, and then it raised the bar for all the parsers in the world. And sometimes, even now, there are some new software that fail on some files I created like 5 years ago. So maybe that was an aspect of the binary stuff that I didn't mention yet. And that was my motivation, yes, a bit more than 7 years ago. Just making sure, just trying to explore the actual possibilities of the file format. The initial motivation for that was this, the tiny P, the very small P file that was, it was a Alex Sotirov page. If I remember correctly, explaining how to create the smallest file, the smallest P file. One P file that is pretty interesting was a file that runs correctly but contains no code, which is good because then it runs correctly, so it has potential, like it can be sent as an update for if you take control of botnet, but it doesn't contain code, so you haven't executed your own code on the person who's owned by the botnet. And the idea was you need to create a file that is valid and returning correctly and without any code inside. And this was Alex Ionescu's request. And just the trick was to locate the entry point to the zone, what's it called, the zone in the Windows memory, where you have always at the same address and you have a return in one of the user shared memory. Yeah, exactly. So you make the entry point to this return that is this constant memory, and the execution will just jump there, return, and because it's returned as a first instruction, then there is an exit process, and this file contains no code on its own, and yet returns correctly, executes correctly, and it has legal consequences if your legal department agrees with that.
So it's like the second time you made an executable with no code and it did something. Perfect.
Well, that works too. But so the initial idea was what Alex, but I helped just to make it working on, because you have different restrictions on Windows 64 bits and 32 bits regarding the size of the PE.
Okay, What about
SMIC.
yeah, SMIC? Inkscape does not support it.
I'm just trying to represent binary stuff. When there is wrong color being printed, I'm not that professional, so not my problem maybe.
Yeah, this is like, I guess, if you want to print photos or something, but I guess Inkscape wouldn't be the tool you'd use for it.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, if you actually had problems with SMIC, lack of SMIC support in Inkscape, then please let us know, like, what were you working on, because that's quite interesting actually. Unless you mean like because the print house wanted it and you had to do the conversion or something, but that is true, that is a pain. But not too much of a pain, I would say. Okay, Łukasz writes, I'm not a security expert and I'm wondering how is it possible to pack malicious code into file data section and execute it? I'd be glad to hear a few words about the matter. I guess this is a question for you.
So you have the table, this section table that tells which part of the file is mapped to which address. So if you adjust offsets in this table, it doesn't. It's not a problem if some pieces of code is actually relocated further in the file. So yes, yes.
This one will be enough.
Yes, or you can even take it in Polish if you want. In PL. No, that was right.
Yeah, but let's use this one.
Which one do you want? What's the difference?
I can find the PNG here.
Okay.
It's still PDF. Alright, never mind. Okay, switching.
Downloading my PDF.
I'm done, and I'm even running your PDF.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I didn't want my passwords to be
So you have the
private
section table
anyway.
here.
Okay. Yeah, it's good that Chrome is not lagging
Too much.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to even zoom this further.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have this table that tells which offset goes to where in memory. So basically, even if you increase physically one of this section, as long as the alignments were some rules are respected for the structure, you can grow one of this section. When this basically it's a block on the file, but it will not disturb the other blocks of the file. It's not like it can really be mapped in a very different way. So you can definitely increase one of this section. There is no restriction of size. You will have another value. Oops, sorry. You will have another value that is size of code, size of data to adjust. But that's about it. It's very easy to do. So and then you put your own code where you put the free space. Maybe there was even enough free space already. And then you make sure that execution jumps at some point to the place. So you patch some pieces of the code to jump to the part you added. And that's about it.
Okay, so one thing which I guess is important is that you also would probably need to oh, perfect. You cannot see what I'm actually drawing because of the camera. Here we go. You actually probably need to add the execute if you want to place your code in the data section nowadays. In the past, it wasn't so important. So yeah, that's exactly what Ange said. And this is actually a common trick also for like modifying executables or making packers to either extend the data section or or just like override the end of it if it's not used. But yeah, just add this because otherwise NX, also known as dep, will complain if it's enabled in the system. Sweet. How are the backed really big programs like computer games? How do you debug a computer game?
I don't debug computer. I stopped playing games some time ago, like around Half-Life 1.
Okay, but that's some time ago.
So I don't really debug computer games, I guess, anymore.
Okay, so other applications, like a huge application, how would you debug a huge application? What's your approach? Or do you not debug, for example, big application? That's also a fair answer.
Yes, usually I'm focused on malware, so they usually try to be smarter than bloated applications. So actually, the clean stuff is usually the worst. I just had a 3.4 gigabyte PDF, legitimate, and you probably sane attackers don't make that. So no, I usually don't I sometimes debug big malware, like when they are created in Delphi and a lot of libraries are bundled and everything, but not really big commercial programs. So I just don't.
Yeah, that's a fair answer. Okay, so nice Santa Claus hat.
Oh yeah, thanks. So DEFCON on one side and DEFCON Switzerland on the other side. So it fits the color, right, and the spirit of the room.
Yeah, that's true.
Oops, good.
Okay, before jumping into more questions, let's move on with the topics. So one thing we did in the past is we had a talk on, where did we have it? Here in Zurich.
Oh,
yeah, and it was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, it was about so-called schizophrenic files. So this is actually a term I believe either you invented or close to that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But this is a type of a binary files, which is quite interesting, and it's also, I actually place them in the same group of interesting binary stuff, like I place binary polyglots. And so let's maybe chat a little about it. Starting with a binary polyglot. What's a binary polyglot?
So a binary polyglot is a file that is valid with two different file types, so two different file formats.
Okay, can you give an example?
So if you, for example, zip is parsed from the end, and many file formats are parsed from the beginning. So if you append a zip to another file format that is parsed by the beginning, then the file is valid zip and a valid something else. And there was last week, the Janus vulnerability, which is a DEX APK, and it's a vulnerability that affects Android system. And even if the APK is signed, the signature doesn't affect the whole file, but just the zip part of the file. And then you can append that to a DEX, and you think you're gonna upload an APK, and then the system sees the DEX first. The important is which part is seized first, and then it will execute the DEX and not the APK. So that's even that was announced last week. It's a vulnerability with a name but not a logo. So
there's no logo, okay.
But very easy example, append a signed APK to a DEX file and you got security bypass. It's also a regular problem when you have an antivirus or any tool that checks for file types, and depending on the order, it may create problems. So we did one issue of POC or GTFO was tar and PDF. And sometimes you double click on the file and the system is like, oh, there's first a tar signature, and it doesn't do what you expect.
Okay. Another
practical application of that is when you want to bundle a format to a payload, and Tavis or Monody did that with against Kaspersky antivirus. So basically it was maybe messing with, I think, the zip file format again. I don't recall correctly. And by putting that at the end of a file, then it had a payload that was already loaded in memory because it's the same file. So it was a very nice way to bring your payload with you, to piggyback on the payload you bring. So polyglot by concatenation, bring your own payload and win. Phonage.
So it's I guess it's also a trick used with, if you, for example, create an archive like with zip, and it can create something which is called an SFX archive, which is actually like a self-extracting executable file. So if you click on it, it will start extracting everything, or like there can be a nice window asking you where to install it. But it's actually at the same time a proper zip file, and you can just take any zip reader and unzip it without executing the code, which is also a really nice way of using binary polyglots, I would say. Sweet. So you mentioned POC or GTFOs. How many of them are binary polyglots?
I joined after issue 1. I think I'm not sure issue 0 was a polyglot, but I think all of them since were polyglots. That's why I initially joined. Then I started doing very small articles about the polyglot, then bigger articles, doing illustrations, and then shepherding external authors. So, but yes, I think all of them are at least zip and PDF, which is again very easy. PDF has the nice ability that you can declare an object and put whatever you want in this object, as long as it doesn't contain the word end stream, because they are stream objects. And then you can put a zip at on the last object. You can even do that directly with LaTeX command. And you say to LaTeX, please embed this file, and it will do it nicely. The only problem when the zip contains a PDF, then the zip might contain the word end stream. And we even had problems with that, and you just either mess with compression or something to prevent an end stream to be encoded in the zip, because that will break the outer PDF object. But most all issues of Poker GTFO have been polyglots since, and we are hardly running out of ideas, but sometimes running out of time.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I remember like a year ago or something, one of the POC or GTFOs was actually like a Nintendo executable, like a Nintendo ROM.
Yes, actually, my standard resume is PDF, Super Nintendo, and Mega Drive. But yeah, we did a Nintendo ROM, but my favorite part was that, so the Nintendo ROM, so the initial story behind the Nintendo ROM was that there was an article about hacking Pokemon, if I remember, some version of Pokemon connected with sound, could exchange Pokemon via sound. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that you could exploit the game via sound, which is pretty cool. And the initial idea of the payload was to try and do a Nintendo Polyglot, which is older than Game Boy, with sound, so that the older Nintendo would hack its sister via sound. However, even with the advice of an emulator developer, the Nintendo sound processor couldn't create the right sound, or there was some technical limitation. So instead, we went with hash collisions, and we used. We calculated around 10,000 MD5 collision in the process of in the making of, and so that the Nintendo would show the MD5 of the whole file.
So it would show its own MD5.
Yes, and again without being able to calculate it. So basically, it's the other way around. It doesn't calculate the hash. It's you put some data and you use enough collision so that you can change the data without changing the final hash of the file, and then you just modify the data so that it just matches the actual hash of the file once the file is over. So you can a collision is also the other way around. You can change the content and keep the same hash. So here's the idea: change the content until the right hash is displayed, and that way you can make the file display its own hash. So in the end, the file itself contains 609 hash collisions. So it's actually interesting, because when you think about it, MD5 used to be considered secure, and now it's a toy.
Yeah.
So it's quite, when you compute 10,000 of them just for fun, the hash is pretty broken.
It's true. Cool. So moving on, schizophrenic files, or actually, I guess, files with multiple personality disorder. What was that? What did we talk about?
So, yeah, a schizophrenic file is just a file that has, depending on the parser, two different personalities. So the parser sees different things. So it behaves typically in a good or in a bad way. And the idea is that the file is valid in all cases. It's the same file type. It's not a case of polyglot, but two different parsers will see different. They will see previous tab. Go down.
Ah, sorry. Yeah,
So
I'm looking for a presentation.
Depending on the schizophrenic file. Depending on the parser, the two different parsers of the same file format will see a different content. This actually happened in the wild, where what was it? Office 360 had corrupted a file, and the Office had corrupted the file, and basically, depending if you were printing or viewing, the content of the file were different. So yeah, this is the same PDF, and depending on whether it's Chrome, Adobe, or Sumatra, you will see three entirely different document. So it's not a visual trick, it's not a conditional if. The parsers actually see different documents.
So it's like one file, basically, if you put it in one application, you get this person, you put it in another, you get this person, and if you put it in even another, you get this person. So yeah, this is what a schizophrenic file is. We had some nice examples or quite a lot of PDFs.
And it can be pretty scary because when it happens in the wild, you're thinking, oh, this is what I print. And if the two versions of the document were made by the same template, and this is how it happened to me in the first time, even if you told, look, because it looks like the same template, you don't even start to look for a difference. So you know how usually you look at the screen and you check all the details, then you print, go at the printer and sign.
Yeah.
You don't actually check on what you got at the print, you got from the printer. And
so
then this, yes, sorry.
This thing, right?
That's another thing. So it's actually a feature. So here you can see that the file will show something totally different, but here it's actually even a feature. I mean, the one I was referring was happening in the wild.
Okay.
And actually in Google Drive. And you had the one document. So here it's just two layers, because this icon that you should rarely see, this one, the one here, this one, the red rectangle is specific to layers, which is an advanced feature. And usually it's in very professional documents. So it's actually something where you say, this layer should appear for viewing and this layer should appear for printing. The funniest part is that you cannot actually tell it to print something else. But this is a feature, and this is only supported by Adobe. But it's also possible. It's happened in the wild that when you print and when you read, because printing wants to be exact and wants to respect all the colors and everything. It doesn't have to be. It has to be exact. While reading, on the other hand, can be optimized and especially speed optimized for loading. So it would make sense that even the same application has two different behavior and different parsers. WinRAR is the same. Listing is fast and extracting has to be exact. And I also found some bugs in WinRAR where you would get something different. But it was not that as bad as having two completely different documents. But schizophrenia can even happen within the same application. Even if sometimes it's also good if it happens with two different applications.
Cool. Okay, so the next thing, which is also in the same group of cool binary tricks, is a kind of encryption, or actually Ange-cryption. What's that?
Ange-cryption was the challenge, and initially impossible challenge, to encrypt a file, an image, to a valid image.
So you grab an input image, you encrypt it with an algorithm, and you get still a valid image and not garbage.
Exactly. And initially I thought it was impossible because I know very little about crypto. But then I learned about the CBC mode, where you can specify an initialization vector. You can use this vector to manipulate and create a valid header. So at least the encrypted file, the output file, can, because of this initialization vector that you control, can have a valid type. Then, because you will only be able to manipulate the size of the block of the initialization vector, then you will, you need a trick. And the trick here is to start something like a comment. And then the rest of the data, you don't control it, but at least it will be covered by a comment. Now, because of the way encryption works by block, if you have this file that is a header and starting a comment, and it's the result of an encryption, right? And encryption and decryption are actually just symmetrical operations. They are not smart, and one doesn't detect that it's plain text and it's ciphertext. Then at the end of your encrypted file, you put something, and you know that whatever it decrypts or de-encrypts, I'm not sure, yeah, decrypts, that's the word, decrypts as, it doesn't matter here what it is, because here you could open a comment too. So basically you put a comment so that the data here will be, and something that is garbage, but it will actually decrypt to what you want. And here is this valid data. So basically this combination of tricks, a file format where you can declare a header in less than the size of the block, and it's probably go, this one will show some slides, funky file formats. So actually, yes, we could have shown encryption. Okay, then I'm gonna go. Yes.
Can I? We need to switch the scene. No,
oh, sorry. Oh yeah, we don't understand. What okay. So where does this start? Okay, an encrypted file not always encrypted. So you want to encrypt something. So basically, you encrypt. You have random, but you work in blocks. So with CBC, with the IV, with the initialization vector, you can get something that you control. So then you can, with controlling the IV, you can get something, some valid header. Then you start a comment. So the rest will be ignored. Then you close this comment and you add some valid data, which you redecrypt, and then this will give you the initial file that will work fine. And basically, you can even try it yourself with just OpenSSL, and with this is standard AES. So it was, at least I succeeded in this impossibly looking challenge. It has no real life consequence as far as I know, but at least it shows that CBC can be dangerous. And that file format can sometimes have a very interesting results combined with cryptography.
So I was pretty close to a real-world example at one point, but in the end I failed. It was Prezi, yeah.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm going to give you folks a link to it, but I think it's like a fail description of a fail attempt at the end where I almost got the IV, like also like Ange used IV to create a header. I also wanted to use it to create a header, and actually also part of a flash file, but in the end I just didn't control enough data to get everything to work. So close, so close.
So if you have a real world use of encryption, I'd be proud. And yeah, I'd be interested also to learn about it.
Sweet. Okay, let's look at the questions then. Talk about mobile banking malware. Do you know something about it? I have no idea.
Very little idea, especially because I started being good enough with Windows and file formats, Windows malware and file formats, so that usually I'm not asked to look at mobile banking malware, but Windows and file format tricks. So
yeah,
that's,
sorry,
I guess, the consequence of being liking too much to craft file.
Yeah, specializing, I guess.
Yeah.
Consequence of specializing.
No one is unhappy with me crafting custom files. It's always helpful when you have a bug and when you come up with a minimum file that everybody can reuse as a clean test for now on without any bad consequences or risk.
Sure. What is your favorite file format for creating schizophrenic files? And why PDF?
Well, no, I'm not sure about PDF. I guess first schizophrenic file depends how many parsers are in the wild. And as I show with the hash collision of SHA-1, JPEG is as a uniform base. LibJPEG is more or less used everywhere, at least in all PDF readers. So there's no schizophrenia because it's the same parser everywhere. And then there are some file formats that have just too many parsers. So then it's not that fun, I guess. So I don't try. Usually schizophrenic file is just consequence. It's not something I look for, but when it happens in the wild, and sadly it's often PDF still, because no one really parses PDF in a sane way, I guess. But it's not a sane spec in the first place.
Yeah,
so, well, yeah. I guess that's every day I learn more about PDF craziness, patchwork. I was looking at a government form PDF today, a legitimate one with at least 1.5 megabyte of JavaScript with some huge XML forms, all in the same file. At least it's a gift that keeps on giving. So it's not necessarily my favorite, but definitely, yeah, and it's still used everywhere. By all administrations, by all HR departments and the finance department to store and preserve their data into recommended formats. So yeah, it's there to stay. So Favorite, yes, I guess it's still PDF.
Like preserving data is like PDF now is a serialization format. Please don't. Please no, this is not a good idea. Please don't. Perfect. Can you make a patch demo? I suggest IDA. Is it possible to disassemble IDA with IDA? To answer the second question, yes, it is possible to disassemble IDA with IDA. To answer the first question, do you want to make a patch demo? Yeah, let's do a patch demo. Why not?
What is a patch demo?
A patch demo is you take it's like this. You create a file which does nothing. Let's create an executable file. And then we change it in a hex editor and we open IDA just for those. Oh, I can actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to play a trick on you.
Oh god.
A trick which actually I played on myself some time ago, which is a cool story. Sorry, I'm going to make the font bigger, sorry, actually. Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Patch demo.
Okay. Okay. GCC-3. Okay, so we run it, and it's hello world. Now, I'm going to open a hex editor and ask you to change the hello world to anything else. Could you show how to make it with a hex editor? And it will work, I'm going to say. So the trick is not about will it work.
So yeah, so this is actually one trick I want to teach my kids about, is that having something with the password, and the password is in clear text, and they have to find it. Because even with Notepad you could see the clear text, right?
Yeah,
you cannot edit, but so that's all. I mean,
yeah.
Actually, it's funny because Hex Workshop, I still didn't know it exists, was one of my first Windows hex editor.
Okay.
And that's some time ago.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
So I'm not sure what evil trick you played on me.
No,
yeah?
But the trick is quite easy. Yeah, change it to anything you like. To Ange, for example, just make it output Ange.
So, whoops.
I think you have.
Oh yeah. Ange, and then 0, or what?
Yeah.
Oops, that's true. You have 1, 2. No, I'm trying to look for tricks or something.
Yeah, you basically screwed my trick.
Ah, sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, so and Control S. Yeah.
Nice.
So I screwed your trick. Sorry for that.
Now we launch it and it's Ange.
Yeah.
Okay, so the funny trick is, let's open it in IDA and let's see if the trick actually still works.
Okay. Because of symbols? No,
So let's see it in a different way. I'm going to actually revert to your patch a little.
You can't?
I can't because yeah.
Because
so
I saved.
So world was here, right? So I'm going to just add it back.
Yeah.
I guess those are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this.
So what was wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see how it. If it where's my? Here we go. Yeah. Now, why does it display with a null byte being here and the source code looking like this? This is the trick I played on myself.
It's certainly not looking in the right
right?
direction. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. I was super surprised.
That's why I don't trust compilers.
Exactly. You are correct to not trust compilers. So what's happened here is if we look at the code, the compiler changed my fprintf to actually fwrite with a size. So yeah.
Why?
Because yeah, in C++, the compiler actually decided that. So this assembly is very wrong. This is better. Yeah, like here we have the size, and the size includes the null byte and the other content behind it. And
yeah, of course. But why a size if you do printf, right?
Because the compiler can. That's the answer in C++. But during optimization, if the side effects don't change, the compiler can do this. And this is a trick I played on myself. So. And this is basically how patching works, if you never did it.
Yeah, not that I hate compilers, but I prefer to see... I mean, I know there are undocumented tricks in CPUs, but yeah.
So by the way, my respect that you actually knocked out everything to the end. I wouldn't. I would just like put a 0 byte and that's it.
That's true, but because you warned me, you know, I'm fairly sure I would have fallen in the trick and like, what?
Yeah, sweet.
Good, but yeah.
Okay, let's move to the next question then. Which is your favorite debugger for scripting complicated stuff like unpacking the media?
In which era of my life?
Now.
Scripting complicated stuff, that's the thing. And right now I don't script much anymore. That's probably the problem. Now again, most of my I don't script. I debug stuff that is not known, so there is no scripting or repetition. And then 2/3 of my bandwidth is about analyzing files and crafting them or documenting them. So I don't do so much advanced debugging anymore that I can think of, and especially not with scripting requirements. So I guess that that question is outdated compared to my current self.
And in the past, what did you use? Like Immunity Debugger, for example, with Python?
I don't know why Immunity Debugger never liked to work on my machine. I used the only script which I like to hate because of how proprietary and how obscure it was and so on.
Acquired taste is the correct phrase here. Acquired taste.
Yes. I definitely appreciated WinDBG for the fact that it was so alt text. You can always copy and the outputs look. It's probably not appealing to everyone, but it has its efficiency. I had some my fair amount of macros under soft ice, and I guess that's enough to go back in time. With debug and piping, then you have you could script it, but maybe that this is not included in the question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess I'll just add that I'm currently still fighting. I have a love and hate relationship with GDB Python.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I actually try to use Unicorn more nowadays, which is actually an emulator. But,
okay.
Yeah, but well, you can script it, so that's something.
Yeah, I guess now it's really. Wouldn't be again. I use already so many tools for just simple things, then like hex viewing, but with the proper view, then it's just learn yet another script and forget two at the same time. It's more like I'm not really worried, and at least I've seen horrible scripting language like OliScript. So yeah, I guess that it's not so important, so relevant, I think. And again, I'm not using something obscure and like that you would never heard of.
Okay, so on the topic of Windows 10s, Przemysław adds, Windows 10s is a special version that may run only application, both Win32 and Metro, only from the official store of, I guess, Microsoft, and tested manually by Microsoft for security reasons. Okay, good to know that there is such a thing. Is it the same model though that like Apple uses for their store, like for iOS? I believe that's true. Yeah, let's see how it works. But yeah, it doesn't guarantee security, but it does like decreases the amount of random malware installations by double clicking a downloaded file, I guess. Do you like PC tools from MS-DOS, the old ones?
Oh yes, I really used it, and I mean PC tools 4.30 was very good, and it was really my do everything editor of choice. Yeah, it was very powerful, especially still at the 4.30 version, because then the next version like 5 and 6 and whatever were started to be bloated. I think used the sequel was not on desktop, maybe? No, I don't know. No, that on desktop was not on Commander. Yeah, but anyway, I used it, and PC Tools was very nice. And PC Tools had some very good ideas and very efficient. And actually, that was my first small story here. I was still young, but one day my own father, so it was my first consultant work. My father calls me, from work, which he never did ever before, and he said, "I lost my precious report that I spent a long time writing or something. Can you help me recover it? And I just guide him. Luckily, I knew PC Tools 4.3 enough to guide him blindly. And I earned my first salary. Well, how much was that? €7 something. It was like my first consultant work, and he was proud, which was a good thing, and also proud of his son and happy to recover his file. So that's
amazing.
Just like first experience,
Nice.
But
nice.
No, PC Tools was great.
I actually remember using it, but I remember using it at the time where I had just no idea what most of the options did.
Yeah.
So it's pretty old school for me even. Cool. Okay, did you find any file format specification mistakes, errors? That's a question from Arthur. A really good question. Did you maybe one, at least one?
It's not, nothing forces author specification to be complete, accurate. So it's more like I don't know any specification that really gives you a total idea of what the file should and should not be. So it's not like it's everywhere. Sometimes I found mistakes. One of the issues of Poker GTFO was a BPG image file format. So BPG is an obscure super GPG image file format that is done by the emulator, by the author of QEMU, Fabrice Bellard. And BPG was just created, and the specs was actually wrong in some way. I mean, there was something missing, and I found that so basically it was the first time where I started to be interested enough in a format that was when it was still being created, even if the specs were officials. Then there was something definitely missing in the specs, and I highlighted that because I was probably the first person so interested in BPG that I wanted to do a polyglot with that. Actually, I found another bug, and he was like, it's an extremely compact and very smart but complex file format. And so he was wondering why I suddenly wanted to put 40 megabytes PDF inside it. But I found this first specification hole, and then I found some other bugs. Initially, it was just curious why I created such a big file. But yes, it's more like I have never found any specs, except maybe the empty file. The specs of the empty file are pretty accurate, and that's the only one where I haven't found any mistakes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my favorite example here is actually zip. Well, you know I like zip, right? So the zip specification doesn't actually tell you whether you should, when parsing a zip file, assume that the zip file has a maximum length comment or minimum length comment, and that's actually really important for schizophrenic files in case of a zip. Because, well, the specification just doesn't tell you, so some people assume one, well, some libraries assume one, and some libraries assume the other, and yeah, and well, the specs couldn't help here. Well, they could say, like, assume 0 comment length at the beginning. And actually, the comment length in that place actually is, I think zip is the only format I can imagine where the comment length would make such a mess.
And actually, zip in comments, we use that for Poker GTFO so that you put something in it, but you just put a null byte before the actual binary data, and it's fine, and it will not be displayed. I mean, yeah, it's not even a proper. I mean, wait, yeah.
True. Okay. Hey, honorary bot. So, ever found kleptography? What's kleptography?
What's kleptography? I don't know.
Using
a trick to steal something.
Kleptography is I think you're right. Stealing information securely, and okay, I actually didn't know what this is.
But a cryptographic backdoor is symmetric backdoor.
I am going to.
So it's just a payload that exfiltrates stuff, or something else. If a payload encodes data via steganography and then ships it, then is it kleptography? Then just an exfiltration backdoor? The payload? I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, it says, but not the same. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the answer is here no, because we don't know what's that, so let's skip the question. let's use our we are short on time, let's skip this question excuse.
But at least we don't know what it is, and I've never seen it.
It's called the as-if rule.
What is as-if rule? Okay.
I don't know, what's the context?
Yeah.
KrzaQ, can you write me what's the context? Thank you. Okay, I really like the idea of your book, PCO or POC or GTFO, I'm sorry. Will there be a second edition?
Can we show the picture? So
We
yes.
Can you tell me where the picture is? Oh,
it was in the doc. I gave you the
yes.
title. Oh yeah, here. So yes, click on the link. Is here. This link is public.
Okay,
so you can paste it in here.
Yes, let's do it. Okay, here we go. And
let's answer your question. So this is what the Bible. Sure. So this is what. Can you hear? I don't know. Anyway. So this is what the Bible before it's printed on special paper, so you know the volume 1 maybe, and this is how thin it is, and that's the benefit of the biblical paper. I forgot the exact name of biblical paper. So
there is a term for like.
There is definitely.
Okay.
But definitely, so it's much thicker as a standard book. And yes, the second book is already in the making, as you can see, from issue 9 to issue 13. So there are several reasons that it's not a problem. Is first, the issue 0 and 1 and so on were quite old, so they needed to be upgraded to our more recent standard. But on top of that, some issues, like I think issue 13 were 100 page, so it was very easy to reach the same amount of page. So yes, there is definitely that's a proof that there is a book in the making, a second book in the making.
Perfect. KrzaQ says that I guess the context is the trick, the trick I played on myself in C++ is called the as-if rule, like allows any code and all code transformations that do not change the observable behavior of the program. I didn't know it's called like that. Thank you, KrzaQ, again. Yeah, KrzaQ teaches me about C++, basically. He's really
he just
awesome.
teaches me. Can you stay longer to teach me more?
Yeah, exactly, please. Sweet. So, next question. Any gold sentences about file format entropy?
So what's a gold sentence?
Well, any, I don't know, hints and pro tips, I guess.
The entropy? Well, entropy usually comes with compression or encryption. I mean, it works well together. So I don't know. Sometimes payload don't want to avoid high entropy. So even if it's compressed code, they separate it or something. But
does that actually happen? Did you see a sample which did try to avoid entropy detection? They really do. Yes, sometimes they do that. And or maybe it's also they add stupid instructions to avoid to be a bit polymorphic in a stupid way. But yeah, it's not so common. And but file format entropy, well, no gold sentence or anything. It's just at least one thing is that usually when I'm given a malware to look at, because probably of my love of file format, and I would hope that when I'm given a very advanced, an APT, I hope that it's actually very advanced, and usually it's just probably a stupid PDF with a link, a phishing link, so usually I'm disappointed. But that's at least one thing I often do. People, I think, would open in IDA and really look from the main to what it does. And I also like to first look at the file with the hex editor and see if there is anything unusual in the structure. Mm-hmm. And also I go in IDA, but not like the control flow tree, but I go at the top, at the beginning of the first section, and I scroll down, and I just see, because if I see something that looks like a decryption function and I haven't seen it call it anywhere, sometimes, you know, IDA fails to find the pointer, but if the code is there, yeah,
or if there's a block that looks like indeed high entropy, and I haven't seen anything like decryption function, then I'm wondering why is this here. And if it was in the resource and it's a PNG file, then it makes sense there is high entropy. So I definitely usually have 3 looks at the file: control flow, all the functions, but from the top to the bottom. Of course, if you know that all the group of function is belonging to the same library, you do want to skip over, but in case, and also the file itself. Because recently I had a very nice malware sample, a stupid application, database, teachers and students, hard-coded password, so it really felt natural, and there was just, it was object code, and it was just one pointer that was, so basically the entry point was just a double word at some point, and it was pointed to a block of code in the middle of two standard functions, and this was actually, but again, with some extra knobs and whatever to avoid a quick detection, decrypting shellcode in memory and everything, and then doing final value. So, but from the first look and the second look, it really looked clean. Especially, it was 99% standard code. So it was a very clever way to put hidden code in an advanced way, and in the end, the only execution patch was just a pointer, one of the pointer to the inner object table, and that was getting things executed. So that was very interesting. I wish all the samples were that interesting. But because at first look and second look, I thought this is clean, but it cannot be, right? And the reason I was given it, yeah, it couldn't. But very interesting.
Perfect. So, okay, Mara writes, thank you for the stream. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and watching it. Okay, KrzaQ says, yeah, we already mentioned this, and Therbel Survivor writes, if you release cryptographically secure code, you can still decrypt stuff, encrypt it with it, but only with your private key. That's cryptography.
Okay, so there's just public key encryption?
It's
well, at least I'm not doing anything with these things. But thanks.
Yeah. I'm not doing anything here either. Okay, we still have a few more minutes, so what I would like to hear from you is about Hexy. What's Hexy and why is it awesome?
Oh, okay, so actually, let me find some good example. If I can find good examples, where is it? I'll be right back.
Yeah, it's such an awesome topic that he actually ran away, so...
No. Okay, I wanted to show an example, but I don't find it. Anyway,
the
thing
can
is...
maybe open it somewhere here?
Yes, but I should have... Oh, yes, here, there. Okay, actually, so that's two examples of the same poster on a simple zip. So can you see? No, you can't. Yeah, exactly. And with DOS, it was different, but now when you have hex, then when the hex is significant, then the other way around, then the ASCII is totally useless. And on the other hand, if the ASCII is important, like the PK signature or hello world or something, then you probably don't want to want the hex on for this information. And the thing is, because of this information that is sometimes useful here and sometimes useful here, then it takes some space, right? And because it takes some space, then you don't want to, you actually, the rest of the text has to be quite small because you don't have space anymore. So instead what I did was Hexy, so it's a mix of hexadecimal and ASCII, and basically I just put the hex, and when it's supposed to be a ASCII character, I just put a dot and the actual ASCII character. So in this way you have just the whole content it's not a magic trick, that it's still how can I say, contains all the information, so you can easily find the actual file. And actually when it's zeros and these zeros are meaningful, I also don't display it. So basically you can still find the actual binary of the file with this. It's the same information, but it's much more compact. And again, when it's hex, then you see it as hex, and when it's supposed to be like PK, or here we see the hello.txt, or here the hello world string, then it's more compact that way. So that was something I came up with to still display the meaningful information and basically have more space for the rest. So basically those are two versions of the same file, but because this one was done in the standard way and this one was done thinking how can I represent information better, then the whole file, all the content can be displayed bigger, and in this case more readable.
Yeah, I actually already told Ange that I really like the Hexy I want to find an example, so if you want to add anything, this is the right moment to do it.
Yeah, the good thing with hex, it's like it doesn't apply to a file format. It's just a better way, especially with DOS files. The hex had more symbols, but now the ASCII columns is usually useless, full of dots for obscure reasons, I mean for font reasons. So at least it can apply to everything, and it's more dense, and you can still revert to binary or to standard hex and ASCII view.
Cool. I'm looking for my debugger, but I started writing a debugger some time ago, actually. It was called the Dragon Debugger, and I cannot find it, but I actually implemented Hexiver too, because I really like it. I mean, it's way easier to read than... Well, it's easy to read the normal hex representation with hex and ASCII, but yeah, it's like you have to this letter A is here in the hexadecimal form, so, and in hex you actually just see it. You just see, oh, this is A is here. It's obviously, this is the column, this is the offset. That's it. So this is one of the reasons, faster navigation, actually. Yeah, but I cannot find my screenshots, so too bad. Yeah, happens. Cool. So
no more questions.
No more questions, and it's, I guess, 2 hours are up, so I guess we should finish. So yeah, any last words?
Thanks all. Thanks Gidfail. I hope you liked it. Don't hesitate to contact me, and for binary stuff, for drawing stuff, whatever. Yeah, I guess that's all. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much, and especially thank you to KrzaQ for being our moderator today. Also Foxtrot Charlie, thank you for helping as well. Thank you for everyone who was here. There is actually a mission which is a translation of a Polish mission, but it's a pretty cool mission, so take a look, and best of luck with it. And this was actually the last stream this year, so thank you very much, Happy New Year, and see you in January. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. And they can still see us.
had the whole world at our feet, watching seasons change. Our roads were lined with adventure, mountains in the way couldn't keep us from the sea. Here we stand, open arms. This is home where we are, ever strong in the world that we made. I still hear you in the breeze, see your shadows in the trees, holding on, memories never change.